Yeah.
Have you heard anything new? I mean, everybody's just kind of wondering. It's now been almost 3 months since Nancy vanished.
Yeah, nothing new. I've reached out a few times, kind of knowing, same thing that the media's knowing. And that's really what's going on. I think the task force, the investigators are just following up on leads at this point, anything that's going to be viable. But any new hot tips, no, I haven't heard anything.
What will it take to break it open?
Someone either finding Nancy or one of the suspects talking to someone, and that person probably passing that information on, whether it be to a loved one, someone who has a conscience. It's one of those things. The physical evidence, it still takes time. DNA takes time. All of those things take time. So there's still some hope for that. But truly, it'll probably be one of those two things. Suspect saying something to the wrong person, that making its way back to the task force, or someone finding Nancy's body.
You, Nancy, not necessarily like a family member or a friend, but someone who had some kind of contact with her, whether it be like a contractor or just anybody, but not a total stranger. What do you think about that?
They're the experts at that, and I would not disagree with that, especially if multiple profilers have pushed that out. I've always thought it was someone who was focused on her for whatever reason, whether it was they knew her, knew of Savannah, one of those things, but that wouldn't surprise me at all.
The memorial is still there. Flowers, a photograph, a quiet Tucson street that looks completely normal, except nothing about it is normal anymore. 88 days ago, Nancy Guthrie walked out of this house and never came back. No goodbye, no warning, no trace. And right now, standing outside that house, one question is eating at everyone who has followed this case from the beginning. How does a woman vanish in broad daylight from her own neighborhood, and 88 days later, there is still no suspect in custody, no arrest, and no Nancy? The tip lines have been flooded. Thousands of calls have come in. The FBI eventually got involved. A hair sample made it to a federal lab. And yet, nothing. But here is what most people covering this case are not telling you. The investigation into Nancy Guthrie's disappearance is not just fighting an invisible suspect, it is fighting itself. If you are new to Crime Orbit, subscribe right now. This case is moving, and you need to be here when it breaks. We have been on the ground in Tucson, and we just sat down with the one man who spent decades inside Pima County law enforcement, retired SWAT commander Bob Kriegier. He knows where the walls are. He knows why the suspect went quiet, and he knows exactly what is happening to the sheriff who is supposed to be leading this investigation. By the end of this video, you will understand this case in a way the headlines have never shown you. And what Bob told us about that Bitcoin ransom demand, it changes everything. The memorial stands. The case stays open. But behind the closed doors of the Pima County Sheriff's Office, a retired commander is about to say what the department never wanted said out loud. Let's talk about what investigators actually have. Thousands of tips have poured in from across the country. The FBI eventually joined the investigation. A hair sample connected to the case was sent to a federal lab for DNA analysis. On paper, this looks like a case with momentum. But momentum and direction are two very different things. Bob Kriegier has watched investigations like this one his entire career. When we asked him whether the volume of tips meant progress, his answer was direct. They're really at a lot of dead ends behind the scenes, still going through leads. Thousands of tips have come in, which they haven't gone through all of them yet. Following leads is not the same as having answers. Now, here is the detail that should stop you cold. The ransom demand in this case was for half a Bitcoin. Not $10 million, not even one Bitcoin. Half. Think about that for a moment. Bob did not hesitate when we raised it. When you talk about a single Bitcoin, half a Bitcoin, That's not normal for someone who's going to ask for $10 million. That's kind of just how I think that would work. This was never a real ransom negotiation. Bob believes something went wrong with Nancy very early. The ransom demand was a pivot, a distraction designed to shift focus and buy time, while the real plan changed underneath it. And once the plan changed, the suspect had one move left: go completely silent. The FBI profilers we spoke to across multiple interviews landed in the same place statistically. This is almost certainly someone who had prior contact with Nancy. Not necessarily a close friend or family member, but a contractor, an acquaintance, someone who knew of her or knew of Savannah. Not a stranger, someone with access, someone who watched, waited, and then vanished just as deliberately as Nancy did. The forensic door is still open. The DNA results are still pending, but the behavioral picture is already forming. The evidence points inward. The behavioral profile is tightening. But the department responsible for following both trails is operating inside a structure that Bob Krieger says is beyond broken. Before we go further, we need to be precise about something. The investigators on the ground in this case are working hard. Bob made that clear, and we believe him. The failure in this case does not live at the detective level. It lives above it, at the very top of the Pima County Sheriff's Office. And that failure has a name: Sheriff Chris Nanos. Here is what the public record now shows about the man leading the agency responsible for finding Nancy Guthrie. Number 1. Sheriff Nanos was suspended 8 times during his career in El Paso. 8. When asked about those suspensions under oath in a deposition, he said, "Never." That is not a misremembering. That is a documented lie told under oath. Number 2. Bob explained what that means legally. That is a list that the county attorneys put together. Typically, it's for lying. It kind of neuters them in their positions. Every time you have to testify, is it true you're on the Brady list? Yes. So it just destroys your credibility. Nanos should be on that list. Number 3. An independent investigation confirmed that Nanos expected his senior commanders to violate their code of ethics the same way he did. That is not opinion. That is documented fact. Number 4. Nanos used his government position to influence a political election. Also documented. Also fact. Number 5. Fox Digital obtained internal emails showing that experienced homicide investigators and cold case specialists were moved out of their positions inside the department. This happened before Nancy Guthrie ever disappeared. The people best equipped to solve this case were removed before it began. Bob did not hold back. That trickle-down effect, hearing those things, it's okay to violate the code of ethics. It's okay to use my position to push people down. That affects everyone within the department. Now the Pima County Board of Supervisors demanded answers from Nanos under oath. He responded, but not under oath. Bob called it exactly what it was: Nanos flipping his nose at the board entirely. We want to know what you think. If the person leading your workplace had 8 suspensions and lied about all of them under oath, could you still trust that institution to do its job? Tell us in the comments. The department is fractured from the top down. The sheriff is fighting to hold his position. And somewhere out in the Sonoran Desert, Nancy Guthrie is still waiting to be found. Let's come back to the suspect. Because silence in a case like this is not neutral. Silence is a choice. And Bob Krieger, a man who spent decades reading criminal behavior inside one of Arizona's most active law enforcement agencies, says this silence has a very specific shape. I think the folks who did this quickly pivoted. Unfortunately, he's probably deceased, probably passed away at this point, and once that happened, I think it changed their plans. They just went silent on it and started focusing on something else. Bob believes Nancy did not survive the early hours of her disappearance. He believes the Bitcoin demand was never meant to be collected. It was a distraction. And once it served that purpose, the suspect simply disappeared into their normal life. What breaks a case like this open? Bob gave us two scenarios. Either someone the suspect confided in eventually comes forward, or Nancy's body is found. That second possibility brings us to something important. A group called the Citizen United Cajun Navy approached the Pima County Sheriff's Office with a formal proposal to search the Sonoran Desert. They wanted permission and a protocol. The sheriff's office gave them nothing meaningful in return. Bob's reaction was sharp. It can't hurt. The more eyes, the more people looking into it. It keeps it at the forefront. If they go out in the desert, they're going to find a body or two or three or 10. Just the nature of the desert. This is the same pattern. FBI pushed away first, then eventually welcomed. Outside help refused, then quietly accepted. Every time Nanos said no, time was lost. Subscribe to Crime Orbit right now. When this case moves, we will be the first ones there. Do you think the sheriff's repeated refusal to accept outside help has directly cost this investigation critical time? Drop your answer below. The recall is moving. The board is one vote away from a decision. And after 88 days, the people closest to this case all agree on one thing. It will break. The only question is when. Nancy Guthrie is not a case number. She is a person. She walked out of a house on a quiet Tucson street on an ordinary day. And she has not come home. 88 days is not a statistic. For the people who love her, it is 88 mornings without an answer. 88 nights of not knowing. Bob Krieger said it simply, and we have not stopped thinking about it since. The investigators on the ground deserve your trust. The leadership above them does not. Those are two separate truths, and you have to hold both of them at the same time. What breaks this open? One person with a conscience. One conversation that reaches the wrong ears. One search team that finds something in the right patch of desert. Bob mentioned the Lindbergh baby. Some cases take decades. Some break open because someone simply could not stay quiet any longer. If you know anything about Nancy Guthrie's disappearance, the tip lines are still open. The task force is still working. Silence protects no one but the person responsible. 88 days in. Do you believe this case gets solved? What is it going to take? Tell us below. Subscribe to Crime Orbit and share this video. When this case breaks, and it will break, you need to have followed every step. We will see you in the next one.